Hey, my name is Jamie and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm excited because today we're talking about how to take notes while you're studying Korean. I'm going to show you how I set up my Korean study notebook as well as some tips and tricks that I picked up along the way the last 2.5 years that I've been studying Korean. The first thing I'm going to show you is the materials that I use to study Korean. So the first thing that I have is a grammar book. I recommend choosing a curriculum as soon as you learn Hangul, which is the Korean alphabet. My first book was Talk to Me in Korean Level 1, and I'm currently on Level 8, but I've stopped using Talk to Me in Korean for a little bit because I'm now studying for the topic exam and I'm using a totally different book for that. However, you're going to find that almost every Korean grammar book is pretty much set up the same way. So the way that I've taken notes with Talk to Me in Korean is pretty much identical to the way I take notes now for the topic exam. The next thing you're gonna need is a notebook. I don't really like huge notebooks. This one seems really big, but it's actually like a medium-sized notebook that I got from TJ Maxx. I've tried a lot of different ones, but these spiral-bound ones are my favorite because if I mess up really badly, I could just tear up the page. Get out your favorite pen to write with. I'm not a pen expert, but I do really like a nice fine-tipped pen, and I also have my pencil case with me where I keep a lot of highlighters and different felt tip markers and colored pencils with me so I can just make my notes a little bit more colorful if I want. This next one is not required, but it just makes studying more fun. I like stickers, so I have a whole thing of stickers that I keep in my desk for when I want to make my notes look all cute. I also like to put washi tape sometimes on my notes, so I keep that as well on the side. Like I had said before, it doesn't really matter which curriculum that you choose as long as that you choose a curriculum. I also want to note, this is just a side tip here, I would not focus on learning a bunch of vocabulary as soon as you start learning Korean. I think learning really long lists of vocabulary as soon as you learn Hangul isn't really going to stick, and honestly I didn't start studying Korean until I had studied grammar a little bit at first, and you're going to learn so much vocabulary within your grammar textbook. So I'm going to show you an example of how I would actually study in my grammar book. This is Talk to Me in Korean Level 8, Lesson 24. I've never studied this grammar point before, but I'm going to go through the chapter and then talk about all the important components of this lesson that I find important enough to write in my notes. Whether you're using Talk to Me in Korean or a different type of grammar book, your book should have pretty much the same components as mine does, so even if you're not using Talk to Me in Korean, these notes are definitely still applicable to you. The first thing I'm going to do is write the lesson number at the top corner of my page and also the grammar point that I'll be learning today as the title. I forgot to add a video of my table of contents at the beginning of my notebook. I still have to write like the last 3 chapters that I've done in my table of contents, but it is helpful if you have one of those at the beginning of your notebook. The first thing I'm going to write in my notes is the definition of this grammar point and also the specific situations that this grammar is used in. The next thing I'm going to write down is the basic conjugation rules for this grammar point, as well as how I would conjugate according to present, past, and future tenses. The next thing I'm going to write in my notes is examples and sample sentences. Your grammar book should have probably given you quite a few sample sentences, and when I first was starting out, I would just copy those sample sentences verbatim. Later on though, I did start practicing making my own sentences, but when I first started out, I had a pretty limited vocabulary, and I honestly wasn't confident enough to make my own sample sentences, so I didn't start doing that for a few months, but the sooner the better. If you can make your own sample sentences, that's awesome, and I recommend doing that as much as you can. It's usually around this time in my studying that my ADHD starts kicking in and I need to take a brain break, so I'll go in with a colored pencil and lightly highlight the titles of those sections in my notes that I just talked about, and just make it look kind of pretty. I don't know what it is about stickers, but I just love adding them to my notes, so I'll go ahead and take a break and put some stickers on my notes as well. I'm at the point in my Korean ability where I don't really have to translate full sample sentences. I rarely do that these days, but if I need to, I'll write down unknown vocabulary words as they come up on the side. I always like to make one of my stickers say it like in a little speech bubble. So if there's like a note or something, like for example, one of the endings to my sentences, it was an honorific version of another grammar point that I had learned before, but I just rarely use this because it's honorific. So I just made a little note there and I made my little sticker say it in a speech bubble. Even though I've been studying Korean for a couple of years now, I still run into times where I'm having a tough time making my own sample sentences, especially if it's a grammar structure that I've never heard before, I've never used before, or it's an honorific structure like this one that is like rarely used, and yeah, I've just never heard it or seen it be used. So this particular grammar structure, 다릅니다, is used to express the word only, as in we can only or I can only, or what I did is just ... and it's usually found in formal apologies where the speaker is trying to show regret or hope. So I honestly have never seen this grammar structure be used before, so I'm having a tough time making my own sample sentences. So I'm going to show you my favorite resources that I use when I have no idea what to write for sample sentences. First up is NAVER Dictionary. I love NAVER Dictionary. If you type in any grammar structure or vocab word in English or Korean, you'll get a long list of sample sentences. It's awesome. Also, HOWTOSTUDYKOREAN.CON is an awesome resource. They have amazing sample sentences and explanations. Sometimes I just like to type the grammar structure like right into Google search and see what I can find, because there are some like websites that are under the radar that I would usually not look at. So yeah, just try typing it into Google. I ended up doing it this time and I found a free worksheet that I was able to print off and yeah, practice making sentences. After I made my sample sentences and I did my worksheet, I was pretty much done studying. Now, the next thing you need to do is review what you learned, and don't review it the same day. Go back in a couple of days and review what you learned 2 chapters ago. Put it on your calendar. This is like the hardest thing for me to do, honestly, but it's so important because I cannot remember anything after just learning it once. If you have a pen pal that you can talk to, it would be even better if you could use the grammar structures that you learned with somebody else. I talked to myself in my car or in the mirror for the longest time, and I know it sounds silly, but it was still super helpful. Yeah. I hope you found something in this video helpful. If you have any study tips that you live by, I would love to hear it in the comments. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.